I liked your book. It was very
That's good to
good.
hear.
Yeah. See, like here it is. It's on the screen now. Woo. Um, it was really good.
Thank you.
I really liked the meta, the all the film, the fact that there's a we have characters watching a movie and dealing with the obviously the effects, quote unquote,
Right.
the whatever the I'm trying to get all the names of them all. I pulled up the William Castle Wikipedia because of all I wanted to see all the crazy
Gimmicks.
gimmicks. Yeah,
Yes.
Emergo, Percepto.
Yes. The fright break.
Yes, I've never actually watched any. Well, I think I've saw no. I mean, seen House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah,
I've
I'm
seen
wearing
House.
a House on Haunted Hill t-shirt today.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I think I've seen a lot of trailers, and I think I've seen more documentaries about William Castle and the Emergo and Percepto and Illusion. Oh, what
Yeah,
these
and, that's a
names?
huge reason why I wanted to write this book was, first of all, when I talk about horror, we're in the area that I am in, I am met with the constant, like, kinda like, oh, like, horror. Oh, that's too much for me," or I don't really like that," or "Why do you like being scared?" That kinda thing. And so, I have a portrait tattoo of Vincent Price. My lanyard has little squares, and it's, like, all of these Vincent Price roles, and it's just, like, different profiles of him. You cannot go into a room in my house and not see Vincent Price, but I still find so many people asking me who he is. Like, "Who is that?" Or, "Who do you have tattooed?" And I'll say, "Vincent Price," and it's just blank. And I'm like, "Uncultured, you're so
Yeah, I
uncultured."
know. Study the ancient tomes. Come on, guys.
Right, right, and so it wasn't until I started, when my first book release, it was kind of like, here's my first book. I put myself out there, like, okay, I did it. And then the second book was a little bit better received. I started to do more book events and I started to do more signings. And I met so many more people in horror. And I would say, like, Vincent Price's name, and they'd be like, and go on. And I'm like, oh, you know who that is? Like, oh, okay. But I still found that if I said House of Wax, people don't think Vincent Price House of Wax. People think Paris Hilton and Jared Padalecki and, the 2000s film. And I don't know why the house was actually made of wax. But anyway, 1953 House of Wax, starring Vincent Price, is fantastic. It's also one of the first 3D movies of all time. And it might actually be the first. I said I was going to check on that one time, but I didn't. And
We'll
so
just
I just
say it.
kind
We'll just say it is. It is the
I'm pretty
first.
sure it is. I
Yes.
think it is the first. And so I just found that even as I was integrating into the horror sphere, the horror culture, and they knew who Vincent Price was, sometimes it was only because of House on Haunted Hill, or it was only because of, they heard Elvira talking about him, or it was only because they knew that he was the maniacal laughter at the end of Michael Jackson's Thriller. And so I kept thinking, man, I get so much. Am I allowed to curse on this show?
Yeah, curse as much as you like.
And even, like, the deep explicitives, because I've cursed before, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
go,
go
"Oh, but
ahead.
not the F word," like,
We're this is it's about dark fiction. People buckle
right,
up.
right, and so I'm just like, these movies are so fucking fun. They are so fun, they are so comforting. Like, you get a stormy night, especially in October, and you throw on an old black and white horror movie, like, you're vibing. And House of Wax, it's not black and white, but it has all that Technicolor, and it's brilliant, and House of Wax is cool because Vincent Price is known for his aesthetic, and he's very attractive and, whatever else, but in House of Wax, you only see his actual face for half of the movie. The rest of it, he's kind of a monster. And so I'm just there's all of these really cool things. You see Vincent Price's range. You see his first starring role ever in one of the movies I picked called Shock. And so I just thought, wow, even horror fans need this little expose on oldies horror. And that's another thing is when I say oldies horror, people are like, "Oh, so you're writing about Dracula and Creature from the Black Lagoon and what is it? Why am I blanking on oldies Invisible Man and like all the Universal monsters." That's what I'm getting at.
Universal Monsters,
Mummy,
yeah.
Boris Karloff. Yes, right. And so you've read this book, so there is not a single Universal Monsters movie on my marquee. Not a single one. And it's because they don't need our help. They don't like
they're exposed. People
yeah,
know
they're
of them,
exposed.
especially now with the Epic universe,
Right.
down here in Florida, we are I'm believe me, I'm well aware now. Everyone is like, I wanna get I wanna talk to Igor at the theme park.
Exactly, exactly, and that's great, like, I'm still a fan of Universal Monsters, I think I mentioned Dracula being my main character is, like, one of her favorite movies, and Dracula was one of my first oldies horror movies, it really was, and I love that line, he's like, "Oh, the children of the night, like how they scream," or whatever he says, something like that, and so, there are those little tidbits of, like, kind of Vince Price swagger and even the older Universal Monster movies, but I think we take those movies and that made Vincent Price. And so that's why I think it's important that we know what those movies are. It's important that we see them, but you take those and then you embed him into this man who channels them in every character he plays. That's fucking iconic. That's iconic as hell. And so a huge reason, sorry, I went on a side tangent here,
You're fine.
a huge reason why I wrote this book because I wanted to expose people to these movies without me just constantly saying, "You have to see 1953 House of Wax. You have to see Shock, which is 1946." Like, and it's just all these movies that people have missed that are actually really good, even goofy in their own little weird way. And then you have William Castle, who's only adding to the experience with all the gimmicks and behind the set or behind the scenes things. It was so cool to have a director be so involved in all the little and all the little tricks. And even once the movie is premiered, you have William Castle like, how do we terrify people even more as they're sitting in the audience? Like, there's just something really cool and passionate about that to me in a world that filmmaking sometimes can almost feel kind of corporate, as a lot of things can right now.
I mean, it's very, it's also the showmanship, the
Yes,
getting butts in seats,
right.
that whole thing, which
Yeah.
as an indie horror person, I'm with you, man. You gotta do what you
Yeah.
gotta do. Get people to pay attention. You gotta throw skeletons at them.
Right, and he enjoyed it, he and that's what was so funny to me is, like, he's just like this giddy old man, like, "Ha ha, I terrify those fuckers," like, and I love that so much.
Um, I had some questions for you. Um, placing details for the 50s, period piece. Uh, I don't know. I've recently also written a period piece, and
Oh,
I'm it was a thing that one of the questions is like, how much should I include placing details? You are not timid. You are not afraid. There's constant like 50s cars, pop culture references, things like that. Is there too much? Is there a spot for too much? Did you pull back any? Did you just went, who cares? This is the kind of book it is. There's going to be lots of 50 stuff in it.
if anything, and it's funny because I've heard from readers, like, it's hilarious that I think that, if anything, I was afraid of not making it 50s enough. I was
Okay.
afraid because a huge part of getting people into these oldies movies is also getting them into that time period. And it's not like I have them walking down the street and you get to see like all these shops and what all the clothes looked like or anything like that. I mean, it's really secluded to this Indiana drive-in, which I don't know if you've ever been to Indiana, but
I've
it is
driven through Indiana.
bless your heart. And I always tell people because people ask me questions about corn and cornfields all the time, and I'm like, it's not just cornfields, but however, this Indiana drive-in is based on one that I went to growing up, and it's been around forever. And it's just this dirt path. It's like there is one gas station. If you miss it, you're not getting gas. Like you're not, if you get out there and you don't have gas, you're screwed. So, like, it's kind of one of those things, and the gas station itself is even creepy and old as hell. And then it's just dirt road, woods, and cornfield. And it's even like I think the plot where they have the drive-in was originally a cornfield, and then the farmer sold it. Yeah, sorry. So long story long, I was really concerned about not putting enough 50s in it. However, then I started to do some research, and I was like, okay, so we talk about the American dream, but a lot of times that gets like pushed into the 1920s because of the Great Gatsby, which is fine. That's great. However, 1950s when people were starting to kind of get a little bit more status, like the economy was kind of turning around from past decades. We started to see like televisions in homes and stuff like that. And so I realized that 1950s was huge on cars. Car culture came from the 1950s, and so the drive-in was invented for teenagers who were obsessed with these cars, for 20-something-year-olds who were all about their cars. It gave them a place to go and to be in these cars that they loved so much, and these cars that they felt like kinda gave them status. And so I had a lot of fun around the different cars. I even have like a Nash Rambler, which was like kind of considered nerdy back then. And then you have like the Studebaker, which is kind of cool. And then you have the Corvair. And so I really got to play around with the different status of people just through their vehicles. And I loved that. I also felt that it was really important to anytime you're studying horror and anytime you're doing a period piece to try to block out the pop culture for a second and look at what were people terrified of day to day. You know, like if people look at our generation, they're going to say, okay, COVID. They're going to say capitalism and oligarchies and, all of these things that are present right now.
Climate
But back
change.
yeah, climate change, exactly. And back then it was more like the atomic age, communism, government like not necessarily government being overthrown, but the government being so far into people's day-to-day life and or like government control or different countries is what we're saying. And it's like you just got a TV in your house and you think people are putting fucking like things in your home to hear you're saying. But anyway, and so I included all of that. I think I even have a moment where they do almost like a storm drill, but it's like for an atomic bomb and they're getting under their desks and that's terrifying. Like that's all scary stuff. And so I think I really tried to pull from not just the pop culture, but what people were afraid of in that era. And I think that helped me kind of build this almost like a fantasy author. Like it kind of helped me build this world where I was rereading it the other day, just checking through the final physical arcs. And it was cool because I had this moment where I forgot I wrote it. And I was like, I was giddy because I was like, oh, I love oldies horror. This just like I feel like I'm in the 50s. And so not to shoot my own horn or anything, but
You're
I
allowed to.
think
You need to. You should toot your own horn the most more than anyone. You have to. You're the author.
thank you. You're right. You're right. So, I think I did a pretty good job of balancing it out. And if someone thinks that maybe there's too much in there, I would just say that you're wrong.
I mean,
No,
you're allowed to say that. Again, you're the author.
I just mean that I don't think I really believe in horror stories that are thrown into the 80s or for example, the most recent Fear Street movie.
I've not seen
Um,
it.
okay, so I won't spoil
I
anything.
mean, I don't really care either, so you can spoil you can I mean, the audience, hey, if you haven't seen it yet,
Yeah, I'm pretty good at not spoiling, but I would say that it takes place in the 1980s, and all the other Fear Street movies did such a good job at putting you in the 90s, putting you at the 1600s, and putting you in, the 70s. They did such a great job with that, not only through pop culture, but it was how they were dressed and even phrases they said and stuff like that, and in Fear Street in the 1980s, it almost feels like they just kinda made a horror story and then gave everyone big hair and then had the big, um, like the big hits playing, the big 80s songs and stuff like that. But to me, it didn't feel like any of the deaths or any of the scare factors were necessarily 80s related. Does that make sense? And so I think sometimes
surface level, setting.
right, right, and so to me, I definitely include elements of, like, a psycho killer in the film you are about to see, but to me, it was cool because you had people watching it's 1950s, you have them strictly watching 40s and 50s horror, and then, that kinda scares them, the movies are creepy, we see the friends react to a couple of films that they find scary, but you throw in something like a psycho killer, it's not something they've seen. Not something they've seen on screen, not something that was really gonna be in the papers at that point. This was before serial killers and stuff like that. So I tried really hard to set the 50s vibe, set their 50s fears, and then kind of bring in something new that would feel really terrifying. And so in a way, it's 1940s, 1950s horror, but then it does have some 60s influence. And I think that's okay to kind of merge some stuff together, but if you don't have your heart setting, I think it can feel, like you said, a bit surface level.
Yeah. I mean, it's a the push and pull. I don't know. I am. I think when I'm reading, I'm very sensitive to like. Okay, I get it. It's like I don't know. I recently read a book that I will not say the title on the podcast, but it was like, "Hey, it's the '60s, Jimi Hendrix." I'm like, "Okay, calm
Yeah,
down. I get it. You're all
yeah,
right. You don't need to hit me over the head again." But I feel like I don't know. This is I think because your book is so centered around those films, oldies horror, like those 50s and 40s movies. It feels more at home to place those have those place details, and also I didn't feel like it didn't overwhelm me, but it's also like it's I don't know, whenever I read anything, I'm always doing a little bit of homework. I'm always going like, how do they do this? How do they make
right.
this work? How can I do it? How can I use this in some way to make my work better? Um,
Yeah,
I really I didn't think about that, but that is it's a thing I've been like thinking about a lot lately about American novels. Like novels
yeah,
about America kind of
yeah,
thing. Like I've been reading Buffalo Hunter,
yeah. Oh,
and
yes.
it's about America, right?
Yeah,
Like that's what ultimately the book's about. It's about how about the nation. And I know
yeah,
the fact that you call out, the 50s is often seen in culture as like, oh, this pure era of America and blah blah blah.
right.
And actually, no, not really. It's has had many problems,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
just like we have
absolutely.
today. And I think I don't know. I really like that, and just made me think about the book in a different way. So I appreciate you
I
bringing that up.
I appreciate you saying that because I was talking with my editor about it, and we're going through these movies, and I realized the last 5 or 6 horror novels I'd read as I was writing this book were from Black authors, were from, Mexican women. I love horror set in Mexico. I love learning about Mexican history, and so then I kinda had this feeling, and I was like I texted my grandfather and I said, "We're driving theaters segregated," and he was a great resource for me, and he told me that, it was a little bit more south, like southern than Indiana, where they had the explicit, like, here's the black section, here's the white section. But he said in a lot of places, especially in Indiana, it was just understood that this was for white people, that this was for white families. And so even like a black presence in the 1950s could have been like misconstrued into something threatening when it's just the same fucking thing as a family wanting to sit down and watch a movie. Also, we're celebrating these directors and these actors, and I love William Castle and I love Vincent Price and I love all the gimmicks, but you have to think that there's this really, really cool section of horror history that a huge chunk of American demographics were not a part of. And so I honestly wish I maybe would have had a little bit more time to explore some of the race elements. I also feel like maybe that's a story someone else needs to write. Like, maybe that would be really cool for, a Black author to write a story in, like, the 1950s, and that was another thing, is, like, I had a Black, film teacher, and her mother was, like, all involved in creating film, like, in, like, like, an industrial way, like, actually creating film reels and things like that, and so this woman could tell you everything about Universal Monsters, she could tell you what kinda camera they use, she knew everything about the Tingler and all these things, and then, she would start to say, "Of course, though, I never saw any Black actors in these movies," and you're like, "That's so true." So not even the fact that there weren't people of color on set. There weren't people of color writing these films. There weren't people of color viewing these films. And so you think about Percepto, Emergo, um, the Fright Break, and all these cool things William Castle did to help people experience horror. There was a huge chunk of Americans who were excluded from that experience. And so I felt like it was important to kind of nod to that, just that piece of history, because yeah, we do have like the American dream and the car culture and stuff like that, but there was also some pretty icky parts of the 1950s, like you said.
Well, I mean, I think it's I want to say your book's pretty honest about the ugliness. It is there.
Okay.
There's the it's the even I don't know visions that
Yeah,
June has of of Nancy
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
getting treated like a witch, which is was going to be my next question was legacy of witches in horror novels. Carrie immediately
Yeah,
comes to mind. Stephen King loves his young women, young girls with powers.
right,
Um, I find it really interesting because it at the end of Carrie, she kills everyone at
and
prom.
you're like, "Good for
Good for
her."
her, and I was gonna ask that, because June is kind of the opposite, because Nancy is really fulfilling that good for her trope, whereas she's like, "Oh, well, I need to get revenge.
Right,
I was unjustly tortured and killed, and now I'm gonna get my revenge on, I don't know, mostly innocent people, but who it doesn't matter. It's on society. Really, it's not
right.
about that. But you have June kind of as, I don't know, counterpart, where she
Yeah,
is actually defending. She's like, no, both herself, but also just the her friends and the other people at the drive-in. Um, was there question in your mind about that good for her thing, about I don't know, there's a lot of it's a thing I think about how slasher movies in particular, which, those 50s, you already mentioned, those 50s movies kind of predate the birth of a
right.
slasher, of Psycho, um, where it the movie itself feels like, oh, we're going to punish people for moral
Yeah,
failings. Was there a push pull there between the good for her kind of tropes of revenge versus, well, June is going to be kind of a defender of
yeah,
just the common folk?
yeah. There definitely was a struggle with it. There was also a struggle of why include a witch,
Yeah.
um, in the 1950s? Like, why does that make sense? If you watch 50s horror, you're not gonna see a lot of witches. One of my favorite, witch-themed horror movies is 1960, City of the Dead, starring Christopher Lee. But what is interesting about when I was studying the 40s and the 50s, I could not ignore the persecution of women. There was so much, like, I even read some hospital records. I mean, I went deep. I was talking to, like, I was filing, what is it, like the freedom of information. Like, I was paying to get licenses, or not quite licenses, but basically approvals to have access to these really deep archives. And basically, the only way you can have access to medical records is if they're 100 plus years old. And so I was reading through some of them, and it was 19, maybe it was 1950, so not quite 100 years old. And I'm reading through these women who were scheduled for lobotomies or who were admitted for life to mental institutions. And you're looking at the reasoning they're there. And it's like one of the common things I kept seeing was, she just delivered a baby 2 weeks ago, has not stopped crying since. What? Like, that's every woman. That's postpartum. Like, you've been gutted. You've been gutted, and people are like,
Yeah,
"Let me see this."
it's an incredibly traumatic experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Your
it's very
body is
traumatic.
incontrovertibly changed forever for the
Yes,
rest of your
and
life.
I think something that men especially miss is so much of it is very primitive. Like, sometimes you have to go on your hands and knees during the birthing process. Like, all these different things that people don't think of. You have people who are saying, "Okay, you need this injection now because of this you're gonna feel," and it's like, you don't have time to say, "What is that?" "What's this and this?" Like, so it's a lot of things being done to you, and a lot of those things being done to you where you are not the, primary, like, consideration. A lot of times it's the baby, getting the baby out. I don't wanna get, like, super political, but we know that's a thing,
You're
you
free to be
know?
as super political as you want.
Okay, yeah, fuck, man, birthing is hard.
No, I
Um,
mean,
and so there was so many things like that, or even just, like, women who married and then changed their mind about wanting to have a baby because that terrified them, and I'm like, "That's totally fucking reasonable," especially in the '50s when male doctors don't give a shit about you.
yeah.
And so, anyway, there was all kinds of persecution. Well, this one's in education. We've never had a woman go to this school. She must be criminally insane. Let's, like, call her dad and have him shipped away. And there was just all these little ways that women were persecuted, and it really just took one person to say, this woman is crazy, this woman is bad, or this woman is a threat to us. And then the hysteria element comes in. Hysteria was such a big theme for me in this book that it became this. like this upheaval, it's kinda like that episode of, Twilight Zone, like the monsters are due on Maple Street or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's just like slowly more people are adding on, "Oh, I saw her do this. Well, I saw this thing happen." And so it kind of became this thing to me where when we think of the 50s, like the perfect housewife, like we think of that kind of trope and stuff, but we don't think
Stepford
about.
Wives.
Right. We don't think
Yeah.
exactly. We don't think about how women, even if they probably didn't realize it, were really under like extreme threats. There is so too easy for a husband, a brother, a father, an uncle, whatever the fuck it was, to say this woman needs to be taken away. She's done. And the doctors would just be like, "Yep, yep, crying woman. She's hysterical, hysterical for life." And so I kind of started to feel that female rage, which was really interesting to me because it was a book about the movies that I loved. And I'm thinking, this is fucking terrifying. Why isn't this in some of the horror movies? Why didn't anybody make a horror movie about this kind of thing? And so I started to think, where did that persecution really come from? Like, how long have women been dealing with this fucking thing? And then it was obvious since, all the way back when we were saying women were witches. And I try to be really careful about that. Like, we did not burn witches. We did not drown witches. We did not execute witches. It was women. We killed women. We burnt women alive.
Yeah.
Like, and so that was a huge thing for me was to make Nancy Jackson so fully a woman, this innocent woman who is even like kind of like deadpan at times, or even kind of just like straight because the accusations are so outlandish. And so she says things, he says, "Why do you torture these children?" or "Why do you harm these children?" And she just says, "I do not. Like, I do not do that." And so I think it was interesting to track kind of her own, I am good. I didn't do these things. And then to kind of see that crumble into her own anger. Because I started to see these things in the records I was reading. And it's like, if that woman got sent away by her father because she was crying after having a baby and she killed him, she hurt him in some way, is it kind of like that? You wanna be like, "Oh my gosh, she's a murderer," but it's also like, he was taking her life away, not in the same way. He wasn't ending, like, her life physically, but he ended socialization for her. He did her ever, like, moving into a career she wanted, education she wanted, and so for me, I don't actually see Nancy Jackson as a villain. I really don't. I think that it was one of those scenarios, kinda like Carrie, where we see all of these little moments where we failed this person, where we failed them so miserably, you know?
Yeah. I was gonna say that I feel like there is a the separation for me while I was reading was like, oh well, she's literally transformed.
Yes.
She is not
Yes.
her anymore. It's like this the culmination of the things that have been done to her have transformed her into the tingler,
Right.
the bug.
The creature, right,
Yeah,
and
the
so
creature.
and it was interesting to me to make even her transformation, though she kind of asks for help from any dark entity, which she didn't believe in until she's like, she's under the earth trying to gasp for air, and there's carrion beetles, which are native to Anna, which I learned, which is cool. But
I was wondering about that. I'm like, it's a very
yeah,
specific detail.
yeah, carrion beetles are specific to Indiana, and they're actually drawn to oak, and oaks are a huge thing in the book. And so I really liked this idea of them thinking like, "Oh, the carrion beetles are gonna get her," and this kind of thing, and it's like that very thing that she's terrified of, that they're like, "Ha ha, she's gonna get this," actually becomes part of her evolutionary instinct to become like an insectoid. And so that was pretty awesome to me. Did I answer your question? Because I just don't. I've talked about this book a little bit, and I don't think anybody's really asked me about the witchcraft element, and so I just really appreciated it.
No, I mean, it's more about the it is that, it's again, a thing I always think about when I'm writing is the do my themes connect? When I'm
Yes.
introducing multiple themes, do they clash at all? And if there is some of that, can't how do I fix it? Or not even necessarily fix it, but kind of I don't know, massage it to
Right.
make it make sense. And it's I don't think it clashes necessarily, but I think it does raise those questions of like, and I don't think I mean, I think that slasher trope basically, which was introduced in Friday the 13th about, like, oh, we need to punish,
Right.
people who have sex. They had to be killed, and that
Right.
and that becomes like an overarching theme, not just in slashers, but in horror movies in general for like 30 years. And it's very tiring and annoying as people like that's it birthed cultures of people who worship villains who are,
Right. And
all they do is murder people. So it's
right. And
I
so
appreciate that June is like, no, you still can't kill people.
right.
And you're a weird little bug thing now. You're not really
Yeah.
Nancy anymore.
I liked doing this thing, and I did it in my second novel, Take Your Turn, Teddy. I always really like creating these morally gray people because at first you're like, "Man, fuck this bug. Like, this bug is fucking awful, and it's killing people, and it's violent, and fuck them." And then you start to peel it back, and you learn a little bit about Nancy Jackson, and I couldn't walk away from the parallels between women being accused of witchcraft or dark magic or lying with the devil or whatever it might be. And then also women trying so hard to fight for themselves as they're being carried away to a mental institution, as they're being forced into a marriage with an abusive man, but they should be the perfect wife. And so to me, Nancy Jackson was kind of this like, she took on all this fury for women, all the fury for women being sent away, all the fury for women who are being wrongfully accused. And so to me, it was more about her kind of delighting in finding or creating the hysteria that people created around her.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the point is that, when she is, I don't know if this was intended, but it definitely felt like it that is not the solution. That's not
Right.
indulging in the culture that ends up killing you is the opposite of what you need, what you need to do both as a literal human in our world, but in general, like you can't
Right.
propagating the culture that ends up killing you is, you know, I don't know about evil, but
It's wrong. It's
yeah,
yeah.
it's
And so
go ahead.
I also really was careful about, I never wanted June to think that she could bring Nancy Jackson back, and that was really important for me, for them not to have that moment. It's like, "Oh, Nancy, this was wrong, and this shouldn't have happened to you, and this, and that." June understands that what has been done to her is so fucking intense, is so wrong, so tragic, that she understands the anger, that she understands the vengeance, and to her, there's no time to try to bring this person back because if you've killed this many people, you are too far gone. But I also like that June never necessarily says this is the villain, this is the bad person, or anything like that. She's really careful to say the creature even when she knows Nancy's name. And so I think that that was also important to me. Was I almost wish we had something different to call Carrie when Carrie does that part of the thing, because
Yeah,
it's like you have Carrie White, right? Carrie
right,
White.
Carrie White, yeah.
Why did I just blank on one of the, anyway, so you have Carrie White, this girl who's just trying to understand menstruation and understand how to navigate social encounters and fit into like kind of the natural swing of things. But then you have this person who is so bent on making her feel miserable, on making her feel guilt and shame, and then there's this collection of people who then think that's kind of fun, let's pile in on that. And so it's like you have Carrie White, and then you have all of these moments where Carrie is failed so miserably, and then you have the person who says, "This is enough." And I think what's so important about characters like this is they didn't have the tools yet to know how to process that this is enough. I'm not going to take that anymore. So all of the energy is anger, and all of that energy is then making them suffer. And so I think that's also interesting when you look at like kind of just like the mental health of it. Like, as someone who's been through all that, she did not have the tools then to process, this isn't going to be done to me, I'm going to leave, or this isn't going to be done to me, I'm going to change this relationship, or and so I think that that's also another cool thing or interesting thing about that is they're so trapped with that anger then once they have these really heavy realizations. And so to me, that's why it was important that Nancy Jackson never kind of ever crossed that line again of morality. She was gone.
I mean, the I was gonna also add witch hunts, McCarthyism. That's the 50s as
Right.
well. So it all flows together. Um, I had a bunch of questions. We're running out of time for this segment.
I'm so sorry, I
No,
talked so
it's
much.
no, that's I'm you, really good answers. The a big another theme in the book is what's real, what's not real. What are
Mhm.
gimmicks? What's part of the show? What's
Yeah.
part of the show and what's not part of the show? Um, and that kind of interweaves with June's powers. June
Mhm.
not knowing what is going on when I see things, when I touch people. Is that real? Is that part of, is that an illusion? Is that,
Right.
not a stage illusion like you would see in a by William Castle, but her own mind playing tricks on her.
Yeah.
Um, are is let me try and phrase this correctly. Is I don't know, is June's powers, I guess it flows in with the witch thing, but the fact that I don't know, is that meant to be sort of also a meta reflection? Because there's a lot of, because of the stage performance stuff, there's a lot of, am I supposed to be afraid?
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
questions about that. Should I be afraid right now?
Yeah. And I think that that's a huge thing when you study see, I sound so nerdy. I love to study horror through the decade. So, like, if I'm watching 50s horror, I'm watching 50s horror for the next week, because I like to look through the little patterns. And I think that something that was really important to me was we always have these questions in horror movies, and sometimes the questions kill us. Like, should I be afraid of this? Should I react to this? And sometimes it's you didn't react, you're gone. And there's loss in that, and good people die because of that. And so it was also kind of this thing where um, it was just to reflect in the 1950s there was no fucking conversations on empathy, and empathy was seen as weakness, and mental health was seen as weakness, and all this thing. So, um, especially in the 1950s, and even all the way up to like 2020, really, we were taught to suppress. We were taught we had to suppress things. So June is constantly trying to suppress almost like this heightened empathy that gives her these visions of death, that gives her these visions of these awful things happening. And so she has to really pick and choose when to be perceptive of it, when to kind of stifle it down, and that's fucking hard for an 18-year-old. You're already dealing with your so that also just kind of was supposed to reflect what it's like to be a high school student. And I was really thinking about it in this kind of really fucked up time we're living in, where it seems like empathy is dead in a lot of conversations. Empathy does not exist, or apathy is the champion. And so to me, it was really meant to be just this power struggle of when to care, when to act, and when to sit back. And when there's trickery involved in that, as there is now, with facts that aren't true being told on news and stuff like that, I just thought that that was really interesting. And then you reflect it back with the very obvious tricks of William Castle trying to frighten people. And so I think June almost took comfort in the tricks that felt controlled, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I love Coward's Corner and
Yeah, and the fright break.
yeah, that's really, and like that again ties back into that empathy of
Yeah,
like, no, we need to make fun of people
right.
for being afraid, even though horror movies and horror fiction is the safe place to be afraid. You're
Yeah,
allowed to be afraid while you watch a horror movie, you read a horror novel. That's the idea, that you can dive into this fiction, be afraid, and then you close the book. Then the movie
right.
ends.
And what's and I think what was really interesting for me about that, and I gave it to June, is I am not someone who can close the book and go on about their day. I am not someone who can read about what's happening in Palestine and Syria and Gaza and all these places and go about their day. I have to actively work to not internalize it, to not put myself there and think, what would it feel like to hear these bombs going off? What would it feel like to wait for aid and it not come? And
Yeah.
so I got to do that.
Again, empathy. is how I would
Right,
yeah, you have
right,
empathy.
right, and so I basically gave that to June, where she's feeling and absorbing physical pain, mental pain, and fear, and so that can feel so isolating and so freezing, like you're frozen in place with all this trauma and ick. And so I gave that to June, and I had to make her keep moving. And so that was really hard as she's feeling Nancy Jackson's pain. She's feeling Nancy Jackson's terror, and she still has to work against her. And
Yeah.
so I think that that really speaks to what we're dealing with today. You know, we have to keep going even though so much of the shit we're hearing and internalizing is it feels paralyzing.
I mean, I talked about this. I was on a podcast yesterday about cosmic horror, and I was like, if you took a medieval peasant and you exposed them to the amount of information that we get on a daily basis without even trying, they'd immediately lose their mind. They'd
Yeah.
immediately go mad because that we are not built, we are not meant to
It's a
absorb all of this
that's
all day long.
And that's such a good point, really, about June's character is, you know, and people like are like, "Hey, we're in PE, like, June, get the fuck up," and she's like,
She's
"No,
like,
someone's dying."
yeah, my grandma's dying. I can't
Yeah,
really focus right now. I can't
right.
run a lap. I'm sorry.
Yeah, focus on the movie, June. It's like, "Was I being strangled? Is someone else being strangled?"
Someone's
And so
dying, yeah, it's really
right.
horrifying.
And see, and we're laughing about it, and I think that that was the William Castle approach then, was to take these things and then kinda laugh at it, whether that's always appropriate or not. But I mean, we're talking about gimmicks, and I forgot to mention even, like, the cool things he did where he had, like, nurses stationed in the back of theater, and people would be like, why are there
The
nurses here?"
actors, yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
I really
and
like that really again, that adds to the, like, what's real? Are
right,
those real
right,
nurses? No, they're
right.
not, but because they wear the uniform, it has that again, we respect it just because it looks like it could be real.
Yeah,
I'm a big pro wrestling fan, which is constantly navigating themes of,
yeah,
metatextuality.
right.
Uh, so
Good word.
that's I'm again, William Castle leans directly into that, where it's like, this is performance, this is stage. What's real? What's not? What's kayfabe?
Yeah.
You don't know.
It's also like, these and William Castle was great at this. It's also like I think I got this from reading Gothic novels. There's also these opportunities to instill these little tiny moments of dread, even if people laugh it off. Like remember I have the bathrooms aren't even labeled as restrooms. They're labeled as like morgues or some autopsy or something like that. And then I
Yeah.
have a hearse parked right beneath the theater. And so like the hearse right there, that's a reminder of mortality. And I actually use a literal I almost said horse, a literal hearse, like from the town. Like the townspeople recognize it. And then I have the nurses, and they don't really recognize the nurses. And whether or not they're actresses or not, the nurse uniform implies pain or illness or
Yeah.
mortality. And so I think that that was something I always really appreciated about William Castle.
And I don't know if this was intended on your part, but it definitely also just maybe it's just because of June's powers, but it gave me a lot of Final Destination. I got a lot of, like, feeling like, "Oh, death is here,
Yeah,
death is present," and it also because I think the book starts off with you have that you get the teaser basically of the Tingler, of Nancy, of
like,
her brutally crushing 2 people's heads.
oh my
Uh
gosh, how did I forget about that? In the woods, yeah, that's my
Yeah.
opening.
Yeah, so I was just like, "Oh, well, now, yeah, kinda death's around, death is lurking," and get that
And
the flash forward to start, and then, oh, we're back to the present, and then moving forward throughout the story. Before we move on, I did wanna highlight there's a couple quotes in here that I highlighted I want people to know about because 'cause they're really good. You describe someone has melting brown eyes as like, oh, as like oh, it's complimentary. Oh, their eyes are dreamy. But I'm like, oh, that's perfect melting because I immediately my meant, oh, that's awful, but also
yeah,
great. I love it.
yeah,
And you described something voice remained in the birth canal of thought. And I went, that was really good. Really like that. Uh, what a horrible way to describe
yeah.
a thought.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the most powerful things we can do as writers. You know, because on screen, like we said, you can use visuals so much to remind people of death. Writers, we get to use wordplay, and I think that that's always really, really cool, and I love that you caught the melting eye, specifically since we have some eye ick
Yeah,
moments in
there's
this
there's
book.
some there's some eye trauma in the book, not to spoil it too much. It comes out October 14th.
Yes.
You should everyone listening, I give it my 2 thumbs up. You should read it. I'll have a link to the pre-order in the show notes. For us, it is time for the second act. So I have some questions for you. Not related directly to the book, but
That's
just in
okay.
general. Yeah, just in general questions. Um, what's the best piece of advice you followed?
That's a good question. Um, okay, it was probably from a film teacher at NYU, and he said, "Whenever you're studying something for a book project, try to be a sponge. Try to suspend your disbelief and think, 'Oh, why'd they do that? That was so stupid. They're so dumb for that.'" And try to remember that when you put yourself in the 1950s, or like you said, even like medieval times, they only have the information that they have. And so that was really something that I kept trying to remind myself of is, there might be moments where readers would think, why didn't they just do blank? And it's like, because they wouldn't have thought of that. They haven't had psycho killers. They haven't had the slasher era. At this point, it's noir and creature. And so that was really interesting to me was you take away this whole segment or this whole chunk of horror knowledge, of survival knowledge that these people would not have had. And so I think that was really imperative in studying like different kinds of periods. And Lee Jackson has this great advocacy where she talks about suspending disbelief, and I think you have to do that when you put yourself in these other eras because there was some crazy wild shit that these people believed, but that's what made it terrifying. Is it's like, oh, they didn't know. They don't like now we know that's ridiculous. That's hilarious, or that wasn't happening. That was hysteria. These people really believed it, and so I think that as far as writing advice, that was some of the best writing advice I've ever received.
Who's the writer more people should be reading?
Ooh, Spencer Hamilton. Spencer Hamilton is a queer indie horror author, and my favorite book from him is called Sister Fun Time, and it's like this sapphic nun. Like it takes place. What is it called? Like a nunnery.
Sure.
um, yeah, that sounds right, right? And it's got this like these really cool like gothic elements. It's got like these sapphic elements, like I said. And he's just really good at getting shit going from the first page, and he writes novellas, and so they're great palate cleansers. He always has really great characters. So yeah, Spencer Hamilton. Another one would be Calvin Ellis. He writes Appalachian horror. And he has two books, and it's about like a paranormal investigator, and she always goes to like find these one things, and then it's like, oh, but there's like a super corrupt priest, or oh, okay, there's a little girl ghost talking to us through our equipment where we're trying to focus on this murder. Like, so they're always just very multifaceted. And something else about Calvin Ellis is you can be on page 130 and think you know exactly where it's going, and 5 pages later, he'll show you how wrong you are, which is just fun.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna be. I think those two questions I'm gonna be asking basically everyone because it also helps me find new readers,
Yeah,
new
build
writers.
your
I should
reading
be
list.
new people I should be reading.
Yeah.
Um, what's a word you hate?
This is gonna be the most woman answer ever. I hate moist. Don't say it. I just
Okay,
said it. And, ugh. So like I've seen men write female characters, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm a baker and I made this cake and it's so moist." I'm like, that just shows that you don't talk to enough women. Women hate that word. They despise it. Don't use it. Like to me, that's a really quick. There's a lot of indicators where you kind of pull yourself out for a moment where it's like, oh, a man is writing this woman. And so moist is one. Another one is catty. I hate when male writers describe women as catty because
catty
that's only a word that men have used
used
to
to
describe
describe
women.
women. Yeah.
Or, like the women who are very in their husbands, like, my husband's word is gospel. And I'm not trying to shame those women, but we know that there's
Trad
right, right. And so I I just read a book recently where she's like describing her best friend as catty, and I'm like, mm. So there's a writer who I asked him once. He only writes female characters, and I won't name drop him, but he's a New York Times bestselling author. And I interviewed him for Cemetery Dance, and I ended up not running the interview. because I asked him how he writes women, and he said, like they're men, like any other character." And I'm like, "Oh, so you just erase the whole female experience." And then every time I read his books after, I'm like, "This is just a very 2D, like, why is this so," you know what I mean? So I'm a big believer in, if you have a female character, why did you pick a female character? Why is her experience, or her experience has changed now? Because there's all these little microaggressions and limitations and stuff put on women day to day. So you cannot look at a female character the way you would look at a male character, in my humble opinion.
I mean, I always thought of it as you write them like people, but you can't ignore the impact of how society treats women.
Right,
You can't write them like society treats them like they would a male character because it's inherently different.
right,
You can't have the I mean, I have the perspective of writing a female character. Yeah, you write them like you'd write any character where they have strengths and flaws and weaknesses and stuff, but you absolutely can't write them in a vacuum. That doesn't
right,
work.
right.
You can't write them like they're Jack Ryan. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and also, like, we're talking about, even if you remove kinda, like, the female experience, there's also just this, like, then sometimes if men write women, it's like, why in every scene do you have to say she's in her panties? Why in every scene, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's things like that, and then I got home and I put on my black lace Victoria's Secret panties, and it's like, why?
I
Why do we need that?
I mean, I barely describe clothing ever, so it's
Yeah,
easy for me to just ignore that because I think some of my readers don't like it because I just don't
right,
describe. I'm like, "Well, they're wearing clothes. Whatever. Like,
right.
if it's important, I'll tell you, but otherwise, they're wearing clothes. It's
Right,
fine."
and I just read another book, and the main character is an assault survivor, and she doesn't even have the thought herself. The narrator thinks, "Oh, but she was in a really small skirt. Her shirt was really tight," and it's like, why would you describe her clothing like that before an assault? You know what I mean? That's victim blaming, and so I think that's the other thing is, like, men try sometimes to write women authentically, but they forget, like, they forget how to be human. They kind of forget that women are human, that women have these same experiences, that, like, we would never say that guy was assaulted because he was wearing that shirt. Did you see the way it outlined his pecs? Like, do you see that? Like, slut. You know what I mean? And so I think that there is a lot that goes into writing female characters. Long answer, long.
I mean, it was about your least favorite word, and we got I mean, I appreciate that. Um, what's your grammar hot take, if you have one?
Oxford comma for life. M dash is not always an indicator of AI. Sometimes it
The
just means I had another thought and just
I
wanted to get it down,
please
and I
don't think that I use so many M dashes.
I
I
love
love
the M dash.
M dash is great. M dash is
Yeah,
incredible. I'm sorry, AI. I mean, I don't. People who get fooled by AI, it's immediately. I read something written by AI, immediately know it was not a human who wrote that. It's
yeah,
immediately apparent. I don't. Maybe it's just people don't read, so they're
yeah.
easily tricked. Um, what rips out your heart?
Oh my god, anything by Clay McLeod Chapman, specifically Ghost Eaters, which is a fantastic book about addiction. It also has kind of a, cool historical element because it takes place in Charleston. And so, yeah, Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Chapman if you want a good cry.
Okay. I mean, that's why I'm
It's
asking. I wanna
it's
be
so funny
destroyed.
because he bounces around the room. He's the most energetic person you'll ever meet. And then
Yes.
his books are like, and she died, and I couldn't move on, and she sank to the bottom of the ocean, and I hear her voice. And you're just like, Clay.
I don't know. He's very funny.
He
His
is. He's
the
hilarious.
and very, I don't know, self-deprecating. I'm
Yeah.
like, thinking about how his books aren't that meaningful. I'm like, "I just read, Wake Up and Open Your Eyes." And I'm like, and he's like, "It's not that gross." I'm like, "There's a man the literally the opening part of that book is a man's mother mounts him and bites his own ear off while she's humping him." I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
it is
traumatic.
one of the most upsetting things I've ever read. So
Yeah,
awful.
he has another book where the opening is a person and to figure out how many times around their head you have to wind a roll of duct tape before the face is completely covered. What? Yeah,
Yeah,
so no,
exactly.
yeah, he writes that one is, I didn't spoil it for you, it's like how he markets it and everything. That one is called, Kill Your Darling. I highly recommend that one, and
Yeah.
it's a novella, so it's a quick read.
I need to he's on my get on the podcast list
Yeah,
eventually, get him on
he
here.
he would do it, he's awesome.
I did a virtual panel with him for past Stoker, and he was very and met
Nice.
him at Stoker, and he's a very, very nice man, and an incredible writer.
Yes.
Uh, this is a question from, my first guest, which is, Mr. Robert Atone, when
Oh,
I'm now adding it to my list. What's your favorite second act in a novel?
oh my gosh, what a good question. You know, I love Robert Atone. He's one of my besties. So okay, I just recently no, sorry, I changed my answer already.
Okay.
It's Mexican Gothic. It's Mexican Gothic. And the
Mexican
reason I say
Gothic.
that is because people will say, "This book is so slow." And I think people have lost patience. I think people have lost patience and the ability to say, "Okay, that lamp was on, but now it's not on, and why is it flickering at this point?" You know, like there's all these little kind of like it's almost like a scavenger hunt in a Gothic novel. There's all these little details around the place and so they kind of fool you a little bit. You're picking up on all the creepy, you're picking up on all these creepy little characters. And then the second act, it's like there's mushrooms in the wall and we've all been breathing it. Now we're all insane and there's a cult here that's been going on this whole time. And it's like I love it because it takes that slow burn and then it just breaks it. And it's like here's all the shit. And so I absolutely vote Mexican Gothic.
Okay. Good. That's another I'm gonna have another book to add to the it's already on my list, to be honest, I just haven't read it.
If you
Uh,
if you like audiobooks, it's one of the best audiobooks I've ever
okay,
read.
that's a good that's a good that'll be next. I've been listening to Buffalo Hunter on audiobook and which
Oof,
is also incredible in
that's on my
audiobook
list.
because there's multiple perspectives and there's different narrators for every different,
Oh, wow.
actors for every single voice, and they're all great.
Cool.
Um, I think that's it for the second act. We'll go to the we'll go to the end, which is it's time for blood.
Nice.
Yeah, which is about work in progress, trouble you're having with either work in progress or something you've already written. Do you
Yeah.
have something?
Yes. So I met with my editor yesterday. I pitched him 4 short story ideas. We decided 2 of them need to be novels, which is al which is always great. But, you know, that was cool because it was inspired by the research I did for the film you're about to see, and it's all about, like, lobotomized women and stuff like that.
Great.
So,
That's I'm already
um
on board. I'm already
I
on
love
board.
it. So that's probably about 2 novels out. I was working on a novel, right before I got the deal to do the film you're about to see. So I was almost done with the first draft. We were about to go through first rounds of editing, and then I got this deal, and, which is great, but I'm excited to return to this book. However, it the film you're about to see is probably the most fun I've ever had working on a story. When I wrote Take Your Turn, Teddy, it was probably the lowest point of my life, like, without getting too heavy. I tell people all the time that writing Take Your Turn, Teddy broke my fucking brain, and it did. And it's very trauma heavy. It takes place in the 1970s, so there is a little bit of, like, serial killer background, but, I wrote this scene in the beginning, and it's about this, like, abusive father, and I've always kind of liked the abusive father trope in horror. The Shining novel is a great example of that.
Yes.
No offense to Jack Nicholson, I just think we kinda got to see, like
I'm on your side here.
okay, okay.
I'm so I don't I Kubrick movies are pretty, but they feel like paintings. There's
Right,
no
it's
like they don't feel like I don't care about like and the way he treated actors is terrible, especially the
ex
female actors. Yeah,
yes,
they're
yes.
bad. But
And so
I think The Shining is one of Stephen King's best books, maybe
I agree.
second best book, I would argue. But
Now I
it
wanna know what your first is.
Running Man, I would say
I've
is his best.
never run I've said I've never run. I've never read Running Man, that's
Running Man
awesome.
is, very different from that. I'm curious about that new movie because it looks like it's
Okay.
gonna be much more closer to the novel, which is not Arnold Schwarzenegger, or not
Right.
campy like in like the '80s version movie. It is very,
Yeah.
very grim, very dark, and it's like the best end, maybe my favorite ending in a novel ever.
Yeah.
And it is like I describe the book as like a bullet.
Yeah.
It
Ooh,
just
okay.
goes. There's no tangents. It is just beginning to end. It keeps momentum the entire way. It is that really good balance of having him kind of a character who's not a good person, but you are still rooting for him because you understand life has
Yeah.
made him a bad person.
Okay, I appreciate you saying that so much because that kinda goes into, like, struggle I was talking about with Take Your Turn Teddy, where I started to identify with this character so much. He wasn't me, writers have to be careful about that. He wasn't me, but I wrote these opening 2 chapters and I was like, "Fuck yeah, like, those are good," and I was so proud of it, and then I kinda, like, ached for, like, a few days after. I had no desire to write. I found little interest in things I loved, like Vincent Price movies, like, all of my comfort stuff, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on with my brain?" And I finally get my editor's feedback on those first chapters, shout out to Clay, and, he had all these fun comments like, "This is fucking brutal, I love it, and this is so 1970s, it's so cool," and then he had this comment, and he said, "This is so real that I believe you experienced it, and for that, I'm sorry." And I sobbed when I read that line and had no idea what the fuck just happened. I'm like, "No, what? I never experienced that, my life has been good," and that was the moment that we all hit at some point where we realized maybe that wasn't normal. Maybe that experience shouldn't have happened. Maybe that was inappropriate. Maybe this was wrong. And so Take Your Turn Teddy was probably the first horror story I wrote where I really had to sit with the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. And it's to this day the book I'm most proud of. It's also one of those where you wanna root for this kid, you wanna root for this character, but because of all this shit that is happening to him, he starts to believe that the only constant thing in his life is struggle, is evil, is abuse, and so as he's leaning into that kind of "This is the monster you've made of me," you have to kinda decide at what point can you no longer root for Teddy. And so I loved that struggle between him and I as well, because I eventually had to stop rooting for him to let the story be what it was. And so Take Your Turn Teddy was the hardest book I ever wrote. So I'm very thankful for the film you are about to see because I got to keep kind of more fun, more positive. But I do think it's important that every author writes that heart novel, that novel that lets them speak to the darkest parts of yourself. And like I said, it got to be a point where it was freeing because I was like, I didn't realize how much I was carrying until I released it. And so I think that's a struggle that writers don't always talk about when working on a work in progress or a past novel or whatever. And if you get Clay McLeod on the show, you have to ask him about Ghost Eaters because that's where him and I hit it off was, I got this really funny, hilarious guy then to say that was the hardest book I wrote. That was addiction was so huge for me in my like developing part of my life. And I think that that's really important sometimes is to remember that authors are alone with these heavy ass feelings as they're trying to make something of them on the page for readers to connect to. Did that
Yeah.
answer your question?
I mean, sure. I mean, it's not a it's purposely very open-ended. I mean, it's a thing you have to navigate. It's a difficult thing to navigate. I mean, we literally talked about it a little bit. We had our virtual HWA meeting for our Florida chapter this past Sunday, and it was a topic that came up. People like, how do you navigate when you've written something that's horrible? How do you
Yeah,
survive after? Like my most recent book, it's the same thing. It's like a religious drama, and there are, it is a thing I don't know. I've never struggled with it as much as I did in this one. I think it's just because of the extremes of it. But it's like a lot of times when you write horror, you write characters that are hurt unjustly. Like
yeah,
they are given undue pain,
yeah,
and you are the person. You're the architect.
mhm,
You built this, and now you're
yeah,
like, well, I'm the person, and it's for a greater purpose. It's for that
yeah,
story. to like, it has to happen. Like, you ask any writer, they're like, well, it had to go that way. Like, why did you do that to
Yeah,
that character? I'm like, well, it had to.
right.
When I realized that's what had to happen, I went, everything clicked. Oh
Yeah,
no, that person has to go through this horrible thing. Oh, this person has to die for this
yeah,
story to work, for the message I'm trying to say, for it to come through. I have to go, and it's hard. I don't know. There's a certain amount of me that's like, push as hard as you possibly can.
yeah,
When you think you're dialing it up as loud as it is, no, you can go louder, push it harder,
yeah,
push it as hard as you can stomach.
yeah, and I honestly I think it's not a direct, like, "Here's what I'm struggling with this writing element," but it is a part of the writing process, is when you touch into a theme that's deeply personal, you have to be careful, you wanna push it like you said, but you also have to be careful that you're not over identifying with those feelings at every single writing session, or it's time to tour for the book, it's time to go on podcasts, and you feel so fucking gutted. And that's how it was for me with Teddy. So I think in the future, now I have a little bit better understanding of what kind of support I need if I'm going to go through these heavier topics. I think I understand that I need to make more time for socialization when I'm writing
Yes.
these heavier topics because you're
Talk
like,
talk
oh,
talk to people.
right, and so I think that's what I wasn't doing with Teddy, is I was trying to make sense of why I was feeling these feelings. Where did these feelings come from? And like I said, that was hard because it was like, "Oh, yeah, it was my own fucking experience, that was terrible." And so I sat alone with those feelings for the, like, entire year. I didn't My friends all joke that I disappear when I'm working on a story, and it's because of Teddy. I disappeared when I wrote that book, and then I did the Books and Brew events, and my good friend Joey Powell, um, he was like, "Your hands are trembling. Are you okay?" I'm naturally a shaky person, but it was like I had isolated myself so much, even from the horror community, who would be the most understanding people of what I was experiencing. It felt like, oh, I'd opened up all this terrible things, and I just really went into myself. And so I think that the offhanded writing process advice I would have here is build your tribe and rely on them, and definitely find people who you feel safe saying, "Hey, I wrote something today. It's good, but it was fucking heavy." Like, just to have that space to say it. And I have a little group that I can do that with. We call ourselves the Spooky Friend group, and it's Calvin Ellis, Jay Stewart, Thomas Gloom, Brianna Morgan, Mona Kabani, Spencer Hamilton. I know Kyle Winkler, and it's great because we'll do that. We'll just say, I really wanted to write today, and my writing took a dark turn, and now I feel gutted. And we would say, that's fucking hard, man, but I bet it fucking rocks. And it's just that little thing that can get you to smile or something, and you remember why you're putting yourself through this.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you write dark fiction, when you write horror, it is the separation of
Yeah,
you are not your work.
right.
You're not the bad person in it, and you're not even the good person in it.
Yeah,
You're separate. It is of you, but it is not you.
right, right.
Yeah.
And so I think the ending actually for Take Your Turn Teddy came from that sentiment of, I cannot be like Teddy and believe that the only constant in my life were these things. And so the ending definitely comes from me kind of, that was where things clicked for me. It wasn't until the end where I realized what I had to do to kind of move past this story a little bit. And so it was so hard to write, but I did it. And I'm very proud of that story.
I'll add it to my. It's on now. It's on my TBR. I'll add that the take your turn, Teddy. All these books I'm buying.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
No, it's a. I mean, it's an infinite
Yeah. I
list.
have a TBR double, like, bookcase. Like, it's basically an entertainment center. It takes up the entire wall, and it's TBR books.
And that's not even digital stuff I have as well, which is like that's
Right. Mhm.
another.
Audiobooks,
Oh,
ebooks,
like
yep.
something's sale for 99 cents today. I'll buy it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
99 cents. It's yeah. I followed them for a while. Let me buy their book.
yeah.
It's 99
Right.
cents.
I'll read it in a couple of years, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. What you do, it's mood. It's like I always describe it as a wine cellar. Whenever you're in the mood for that. I want to read a
Right,
vampire book today. I want to read a gothic book today. Well, what do I got?
right.
What's in the
That's
cellar?
awesome.
I can pull something out.
That's awesome.
I go ahead.
So sorry. I've been doing this thing, for the past year where I don't know anything about books going into them at all. And I write reviews and do interviews for Cemetery Dance, and it's the most fucking fun I've ever had because 'cause I've picked up so much shit that I wouldn't have otherwise. Like, if someone woulda told me there was an AI element to Chuck Tingle's Bury Your Gays, I would have said, "That's not really my vibe. That's not really my thing." I fucking love that book. I love it so much. It has some of the scariest characters I have ever read, and and then it also has this really great heartfelt moment, and so, like, that's another thing is I don't think I would have picked up a werewolf book. I wouldn't have said that was my thing, but I read When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy.
That's like 3 books away. I think I'm gonna be reading it. I've
Right.
the I'm a my werewolf book has the toxic masculinity werewolves in it
That's
too. So
ama
I'm like,
that's
I need to
amazing.
read and I need to read someone else's toxic
Yeah.
masculinity werewolf.
So I recommend it. Like, I recommend even if you have some books on your TBR and you added it because of the cover, or you added it because you heard, "Oh, this is like I just read one and they said it's Mexican Gothic meets Ready or Not." And that's all I knew going into the book. I had
That
no idea.
sounds
So
stop digging, you hit oil.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and so I went for that, and so and I've even picked up some that were cover buys or whatever, and I've just really had fun reading types of books I never would have thought I would enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know, when people say I can't buy any more books, I'm like, I can't
I don't
fathom.
believe in that.
Yeah, I can't fathom, like, what else in my life can I cut out so I can keep
And
adding?
it's books, you know, it's like it'd be worse to have, like I used to be really guilty of buying new clothes, like, once a week, you know, and that's doing too much, and, you know, clothes, like, are a huge part of, like, climate, you know, things that don't get recycled properly or whatever, and books can keep going. They can keep living for a long time.
I mean, they're gonna outlive me.
Yeah,
My books will outlive me, probably. I hope
my
so, at
books
least.
yeah, my
Yeah.
books will outlive me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're my babies.
Right, it's
They're my
also, like,
kids.
home decor
It
too.
is. It's art. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, Haley, where can people find you on the internet? Where should they follow you?
I am most active on TikTok and Instagram. You can find me across all platforms though, including Threads and Blue Sky at Haley Newlin underscore author.
There you go. I'll have links to all those places in the show notes for anybody who wants to follow Haley. I suggest you do. Thanks for the chat, Haley. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I feel like I talked your ear off, but it was fun.